Guys, exciting news! I am no longer a trap star sleeping on the floor. One of my friends told me that I was living the trap life, and I thought it was pretty comical. I thought it was pretty hilarious. We're on the bed now. I built it. I'm very excited, and if you're following me on Instagram, you saw the whole process. I nearly almost wasn't able to complete the building because it was very scary and there was a lot of instructions, but there was no extra pieces, and so far it hasn't collapsed on me. Hopefully it doesn't do that throughout this video. This video, I wanted to touch on another type of Christian that gets labeled a hypocrite. And something else that I noted while I was getting ready for today is that labeling, criticism, gossip are all products of ignorance. So when someone is ignorant of your truth and doesn't know you personally, it is very easy to take things at a superficial level and just fly with it. And so to target that ignorance, it's a misconception that once you receive Jesus that you're going to start playing the harp and fly away in beautiful wings. Being a follower of Jesus, being a Christian, is exactly the same in the 3D, okay? So Christians are exactly like you and I, like your neighbor. We all struggle, we all fall short of God's glory. All of us. Once you receive Jesus, it's not like life gets any easier. It's not that life becomes a full-blown vacation on paradise with all drinks included, all open resort. No. Following Jesus is like committing to going to the gym. It's like committing to marriage. It takes work, it takes discipline, it's not always pleasant. But is it worth it? It is worth it, indeed. The common misconception about Christianity and following Jesus is that you have to give up your life, that you have to change and stop drinking and stop doing all these things, when in reality, Jesus never called us to do anything. He opens his arms and he just wants to embrace you and love you. And it is his love that will automatically transform you, because you realize that you need nothing, that nothing in this world compares to that love that he offers us. And so that's a nice little segue into what I'm going to speak on today. So obviously we talked about it last time, the Pharisee faith, where people think that they have to do something in order to obtain God's favoritism, in order to be a good Christian. But in reality, it backfires and it does the complete opposite, because it pushes away others if it's too legalistic. And so today's video, I wanted to talk about those people that don't have Pharisee faith, that know that they don't have to do anything for Jesus's love and salvation. This is for the people that know, accept, and believe that Jesus died for them regardless of the pile of trash that we once were before. This is for the people that get labeled a hypocrite by people that don't know that this is how it is. This is how it is to be following Jesus. And so let's dive into it. I broke this message into three things that cause believers to relapse in sin, or to just blatantly sin in general, and kind of may lead to misrepresenting Jesus before non-believers. Number one, I wanted to talk about the story of Peter in the boat. The disciples are in the boat and Jesus appears to them and they get scared. They get scared because they think that he's a ghost, and so they start questioning him. And Jesus, he's walking on the water. Very common story. He's walking on the water and he tells them that it's Jesus, it's me guys. And they don't believe him. And then Peter was the boldest. He was like, you know what, Jesus, if it is really you, then ask me to walk on the water like you. And Jesus was like, yeah, come on up. And so Peter gets out of the boat, he starts walking on water. And then Matthew 14:30 says, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. And when we break that verse down, it's when he saw the wind. When he saw the wind, he was afraid, and then he began to sink. And I know that this is a common sermon among churches, but I wanted to throw it in today's message because it relates to the topic. You know, if you focus on the wind, aka the things that come and go, the things that are turbulent, the things that, you know, are in the moment, then you lose sight of Jesus. You lose sight of what you were called for. You get distracted and you start to sink because you've let fear in instead of faith. Now you're living in the flesh. And that is what the Bible consists of. The Bible and Jesus teaches us to live by faith, live in the Spirit. And living in the Spirit, living by faith, does not mean to focus on the now, to focus on what's happening before you. It's not about focusing on the lack that there is. It's focusing on God and Jesus and who He is, who you know He is, because God will not operate in your life if you don't know who He is. You need to know His character. You need to know what He promises us. When Peter started to sink because he focused on the wind rather than Jesus calling him, he started to sink and he let his problems sink him with fear. I just wanted to remind you guys and myself that God is sovereign. God is sovereign. What does sovereign mean? It means that He's above anything and everything. Anything and everything. The wind is His. The storm is His. Your struggles are His. So when you focus on the struggle, you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on the problem, not what Jesus can do for you, what Jesus will do for you. He just wants you to keep your eyes on Him. Number two is a brief one, but I feel like it impacts all of us, believer or non-believer. Impatience is one of those things that inspires us to transform into this God, thinking that we can change the situation, thinking that we can expedite the process. God's plan is sovereign. God is sovereign. When we take a look at stories like Abraham and Sarah, this couple was old. They've never had kids. They really wanted kids because back in the day, children were a sign of success. That's how people measured success, is by how many kids you had. And so anyways, they didn't have any kids and they were old. And they wanted something. And God promised, yes, I will give you kids. And you know what? They're going to be innumerable. That's how many you're going to have. And, Abraham was like, okay, I trust you, Lord. And then the Lord went quiet. It doesn't mean He left. He went quiet because He wanted to see if they trusted His plan. But, Sarah, I feel like in the story of Abraham and Sarah was the one filled with more doubt, with more skepticism, because Abraham believed God, but Sarah was always like provoking In the story, Sarah suggests that God is just silly and that he should just get Hagar, the servant, pregnant, and that way they can have kids through Hagar. And so he does that, and Hagar gets pregnant, they have a kid. Then Sarah regrets it because that's supposed to be her kid, not her servant's kid. So she gets jealous, and now she wants Hagar to leave because, jealousy, insecurity. And then they send her away with the son. And you see the detriments of that. You see the detriments of that decision of disobeying, of rushing things, of neglecting God's promises and commands. So in that example, if we apply it in today's society, someone might look at that and say, these Christians, they cheat. They just had a baby with the servant. It looks bad. So impatience can grow frustration, which then lead to action, which lead to sin and misrepresentation of the greatness of God, but also just pain, because you do really think that Sarah enjoyed imagining what was going on between Hagar and her own husband. And for Hagar, now she had to go in the wilderness because her master wanted her to get pregnant by the husband. It's not like she wanted it. Who knows? But I really don't think so. I think Hagar was just minding her business. Impatience breeds dishonor. God's amazing plan takes time. It takes time to give you the treasures that he has. You know what they say? Easy come, easy go. So learn to trust, learn to hold fast, learn to, do productive things with the time in between what you are waiting for and the now. The last thing, speaking of Hagar leaving into the wilderness and wandering around, wandering and, moving away from the presence of the Lord will end up in sin. Because if we take a look, even the disciples who were with Jesus day after day, night after night, they were together all the time. All the time. Jesus literally had to run away and have his meditation time because they were with him at all times. And the funny thing about that is that in many stories, the disciples screw up. The disciples do and say many stupid things. And the Lord is so graceful and so loving, that he corrects them. He corrects them, he guides them in a loving manner, and they're able to grow that way. How amazing it is? The amount of times that Jesus told the parable and they were illuminated, they were like, oh, because they finally got new concepts that they could never understand on their own. And so same with this, you cannot wander off. You have to remain in the presence of Jesus, in the presence of the Lord, because in that presence, in that space, God will lovingly guide you. God will lovingly teach you how to live life. That is why Jesus is the way, Jesus is life, Jesus is the truth. When we abide in Jesus, we're going to screw up because we're just human. But when we are abiding in him and following him, we can trust that he will take care of us and that we are safe because he is our shepherd. We are welcome to wander and he will come after us, but that just means that you will be attracting painful lessons that you wouldn't have learned if you had, stayed close to Jesus, because you wouldn't have to learn it because he would teach you. He would teach you the importance of abstaining from sex before marriage. He would teach you why it's wrong to steal, even if you are in need. He would teach you all these moral things without you having to explore it yourself. Some may say, well, how do I abide? How do I remain in the space of Jesus and God? That's through meditation and prayer. Prayer is you voicing out and calling out, Jesus, God, I need you. This is how you express yourself. Hey, you know what? I'm actually really worried about this, that, my health, my kids, my husband, whatever, my friends. And meditation is how you receive the word of God. Meditation and just being quiet, listening, awaiting his response. That is how you communicate. Prayer is talking, meditation is listening. I want to mention when, it was time for Jesus, it was coming close to the time that Jesus was supposed to get crucified. And he was really stressed out. Jesus was really stressed out because, he's a human and he's experiencing life and he feels things, on his skin. And he knows what pain feels like. And he's called to die on the cross, to get nailed. And he knew all of these things and he was really stressed out. He just didn't want to do it, to be honest. He did not want to do it. So he would take a lot of breaks more frequently. And on one of the breaks, he told them to keep watch because, they were hunting him down and it wasn't the time yet to get crucified. So he was like to the apostles, he was like, I'll be right back. I'm just going to go pray. I need you guys to stay alert, stay awake, be on guard. I'll be right back. So he goes and prays, comes back. They're asleep. They fell asleep because they were tired. Mind you, Jesus was also tired, but in that story where Jesus goes, prays, and comes back and finds them sleeping, he says to them, why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation. Temptation comes from our own desires. That goes with the wandering thing. Like, you have to abide in God and Jesus so that he can correct you. You have to pray so that you avoid temptations, so that the desires of your heart are replaced by the desires of Jesus. John 15, 4-5, I'm going to leave you with this. He says, abide in me and I in you. It's a mutual thing. Abide in me and I in you, as the branches cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine. So neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Like, if a branch falls off of the tree, it can no longer bear fruit. And the fruit that was on it is going to go bad if it's not stuck to the tree. And so, same thing here. If you are not glued to God, if you are not in the presence of God, if you are not praying, if you are not focusing on him, what else did we say? If you are not waiting on the Lord in his presence, trusting him in his promises, you are not going to bear fruit. And fruit can be whatever you'd like. Fruit can be, you're never going to experience joy. You're never going to experience peace. You're never going to experience kindness. Heaven on earth. Because you are not attached to the branch that gives life. Those are the 3 points that I wanted to kind of touch on for the believer who recognizes that they don't need to do anything. They don't need to stop drinking. They don't need to do anything. It is simply about remaining in the Lord, so that, his thoughts become your thoughts. His heart becomes your heart. And, we're all in this journey together. Like I said, it doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. You're still going to be tempted because we're humans and, our flesh is stubborn. Spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience struggles. It just means that Jesus sees you. You are with him. He will correct you. Just like his apostles, They were learning with him all the time. They would ask him questions. Jesus was loving. He would do even parables. He would show you in apples and oranges so that you could understand. Jesus knows your struggles. Jesus was a human. He knows what it's like to be human. And God has mercy on you. He wants your soul to be set free. He wants your soul to experience love and completion. And that's why he came and died for you. For you, for me, for us. Don't get discouraged if you fall, but also remember to be humble, because that's one of the key components to not being a hypocrite, is to humble yourself and realize that you are just like all of us, struggling. We are all in this together. We are all struggling with something, and nobody is superior to anybody else. So yeah, but aren't we glad that we have Jesus to teach us how to live in a better way, and who also not only teaches us, but holds tutorials after school so that we can get back on track. But anyways, enough chatting for me. I'll see you for the next part of the series, last and final part, next Thursday. Have a good week, guys.